Hello, my name's Roz Ward. I am the Victorian Socialist candidate for Richmond, and I guess in relation to transport, I am a bike rider, a runner. I have a 2-and-a-bit-year-old son who's just learning to ride a tricycle quite badly and scoots. And I also drive, and I take a lot of public transport. So I'm also a long-term activist. And if you've heard my name, it's probably in relation to Safe Schools, the program that I co-designed to support LGBTI plus young people in schools that we ran from 2010 onwards, and made me the subject of a lot of conservative backlash in the Murdoch media and so on. So if you've heard of me or thought my name is familiar, that's where you will have heard of it. I'm a long-term socialist activist on a number of campaigns. Well, our vision for that's a good train. Our vision for streets in Richmond is really the same as for all across Metro Melbourne, Northern Metro and Western Metro, where we have a chance of getting upper house candidates elected, is to make streets that are about people using them and not corporate interests. So our fundamental value that underpins everything is people before profit. So streets where people are put first, and any element that's to do with profit is not part of the equation, is where you'll find Victorian Socialists. So I guess I can say some more about the detail of that as we go through. So as a socialist, our values are really about equality, about social justice, about economic justice, and about putting people first and taking the profit motive out of all of the political decisions that go on. Sometimes that's more obvious than others. So the fact that the state government gives $2.7 billion to subsidise private companies to run public transport systems, I think is fundamentally wrong, is a bad decision, and is something that if you reversed and spent that money on public provision of transport, public transport, with not much extra investment, you can make a much better free public transport system, upgraded, extended, and that would have a knock-on effect on traffic, street pollution, bike riders, walkers, runners, all the other people that use the transport network. So yeah, our values are about people. They're not about what the billionaires want, which really does have much more of an impact on, I think, the main political parties than a lot of people would like to realise. The fact that, literally Gina Rinehart could have a direct line to members of the Labor government would rightly be shocking for people, but that's kind of how the system runs. So our way of thinking, our values are about reversing that and saying ordinary people should get to decide what happens in their local communities, and it should be about the services that people need. It should be about the planet that we want to live on, the communities that we want to live in, and it should be, nothing to do with the profits of businesses and corporations. At the moment, any street that has a Victorian Socialist yard sign on the fence makes me pretty happy. I mean, I think a beautiful street is really, just about people who live there feeling like it's home, and it's a space where you can live and enjoy yourself and not be worried about things like traffic or pollution, or worried about the future of the trees on your street, or the nature strip, or I live on a street where our nature strip is like a shared playground for a bunch of our kids, and to think that that could be affected by future developments is a pretty horrible thought. But I think a lot of people are worried about what's going to happen to their streets, whether they're safe in the street, whether their trees are safe, whether it's a space where you can enjoy the precious time that we get to spend outside of work. So that's what makes a beautiful street, whatever people want to make it. And I think obviously having a bunch of nature on your street is also pretty excellent in my opinion. I would love every street to be a street where kids can bike not just to school but anywhere they feel like at any time of day or night when it's dark. I think shared spaces for all types of different transport would be ideal. I would really love my son to be able to bike or scoot or get to school in a way that's not in the back of a car. I grew up in a village in Somerset where my parents campaigned actually about the fact that down the road that we lived on you basically couldn't walk because there was no space aside from traffic and tractors, and there was a big campaign around that to get kids able to bike to school, which we ended up doing. So I have a long history of thinking about riding bikes on roads and shared spaces, so yeah, definitely. And I think lots of people have some fantastic ideas about how to do that, and yeah, we would, as Victorian Socialists in Parliament, be very much open to listening to people's ideas about how to make sure that kids can ride their bikes to school. So the biggest change that I think we should make to transport in Victoria is to end the privatisation of public transport, to put everything back in public ownership. It would save us $2.7 billion a year. That could be reinvested into more services, particularly I think in some of the outer suburbs. What we've seen is a whole lot of development and no infrastructure. So buses that don't connect east to west. Even in the inner north we have this issue that everything is like a arterial like hub and spoke kind of transport system, whereas there's no connections, or they stop at stupid times. So having a public service for transport would mean that we could make decisions that are based on where people need transport, how frequently they need it, and ultimately to have an on-demand public transport system with enough services to cater for people wherever they need public transport, whatever time of day or night. So I think that would make a huge difference. And obviously around here, traffic is a huge issue, Hoddle Street, etc. Like, the only thing that's going to make a difference to that is people leaving their cars at home or not having cars and thinking that public transport is going to be just as convenient. And the only way I think we can do that is if we make public transport a system that is for people, not profit. I think, as I said in my last answer, really it covers a lot of it. Fully integrated on-demand public transport would be a huge step in the right direction. I think we could also massively improve the infrastructure around electric vehicles. I think if we were to transition to electric vehicles, and we should, that we need some kind of subsidy towards people on lower and middle incomes to be able to afford electric vehicles, because it's all very well saying we should do it, but only rich people drive Teslas basically. So we need something to help people to get to that point alongside public transport network. And also I just think there's so many people who understand these issues that should have a voice in fixing the system, and listening to the researchers and the activists and people like Streets Alive in Yarra on these answers would make a big difference. So the state government could do a lot, and they could start by listening to people who want to make our streets more vibrant and more alive.